All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to this month's episode of Elevánt Insights. We are very excited to have an amazing guest that we'll introduce here in just a minute. As we wait for a few attendees to be joining, we want to get this recording started. And so July is we're in the thick of July and it's very hot outside. So hopefully you guys are staying cool. Today we're going to be talking about retirement income. And so I'm actually just going to shoot it right over to Dan and have you introduce our guest.
Great. Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. You know, as I think about this topic, retirement income, it's one of the reasons that Brian and I got in the business is, you plan for retirement, but then you get to the retirement and you got to figure out how to take that income from it. And several years ago, I made the determination that I need to continue to improve myself, my ability to explain those topics and those things to clients. And so I have done some additional training. And one of those is Retirement Income Certified Planner, which I'm part of. And Steve, that's where I've been introduced to him as one of the instructors for that. So by way of introduction and part of his resume, as if you will, is that has his JD degree, has attained a few other accreditations, RICP, the CLU, ChFC, and the AEP, and he's currently the professor of practice and scholar and residency at the American College of Financial Services. And I just like to start out by just posing a question to him. You know, as we're talking about retirement planning and those types of things, Steve, how did you initially get interested in that topic?
Well, and first of all, thank you, Dan, and thank you, Brian. So it's nice to be here. And by the way, I'm in Florida, and I think it's cooler than what you're having. So I just thought I'd pass that on. But it kind of answers the question is, I thought I was retired about 9 years ago. I worked as an attorney with retirement and estate planning for a large financial service company, and actually followed my own advice and got to about 62, said, okay, time to pull up stakes. And I thought I'd do a little adjuncting at a local law school just to, supplement income and stay busy. And it's turned into a passion. So now I was the director of the Center for Retirement Income at the American College. And that's where we have this retirement income certified professional, which Dan, you've been working on. And now it's kind of a full-time thing. And the reason is because I've really had a passion recently for working with people, particularly people's advisors, on this whole complicated issue we have of retiring successfully in the United States economy. It's different than in a lot of places, and so I want to keep helping on it. So that's how I got here.
Great. You know, when we deal with income planning, a lot of times at the macro level, what would you say are some of the main problems or the concerns that we see with the American public and the way that they look at retirement? What are some of those concerns?
Well, one of them you mentioned earlier, and I did want to point that out, is there's retirement planning for pre-retirees, like certainly, Brian and you, Dan, but there's also retirement planning for people who are, getting more elderly and all that. For the retirement planning for the pre-retirees, if you will, I'm just going to share real quickly a slide because I think it kind of gives you an idea what the idea is. If you think about it, what you're trying to do is create your own retirement income home. I mean, in other words, you want to be comfortable in retirement. Isn't that our goal? And so the way it works in the United States, you kind of have to build your own retirement home. And on the first floor, you really got to take care of the basics. So you got Medicare, that comes up at 65. There's some really important decisions you have to make. You got Social Security that can be anywhere between 62 and 70. And doing it the right way is going to make a big difference for the rest of your life because essentially you can't undo it. So you got this kind of first floor, but most of us want to live beyond that. And so you have your qualified plan. Nowadays, so many of us have a 401k plan rather than a defined benefit plan. so it's kind of it's a big pot of money that we have to figure out what to do with. A lot of us want to supplement it with things like traditional or Roth IRAs, those kind of things. And then frankly, just to really be able to live a comfortable retirement, typically people are going to need some kind of savings and investment and that kind of thing. And I just brought that up because to answer your question, I think there are three big areas that we want to think about when you look at the term retirement income. One is figuring out, are you going to have enough money in retirement? In other words, am I going to run out of money before I run out of oxygen? I mean, just the baseline question, will I have enough? But there's more to that is, how do you actually retire? Meaning, what do you do with your 401k when you hit retirement? And when do you take Social Security? And with Medicare, do you take, Medicare Advantage, or do you take original Medicare? All those kind of things. And then a third one is how to deal with the complexity of it. It's a shame, frankly, but in this country, it is incredibly complex. That home I showed you, something you really kind of have to build. In other words, it's not like our parents or grandparents where they basically got a pension plan and they got their health insurance from their employer and some Social Security when we're done. Now you're kind of creating all that yourself.
Very true. So if we were to maybe take those things in order, as we talk with clients, I think that one of the challenges we always face is, how do you determine rather how much money you actually need to retire on?
Yeah, that is a question, because again, with my dad, he had a defined benefit plan and they said you're going to get X dollars a month in Social Security, and that's what he had. And back then you would save savings bonds. Nowadays, you get this pot of money and you go, what am I supposed to do with that? So one thing I wanted to mention, there's a lot of ways to address that, but one I wanted to bring up that's kind of a concern as we speak. So we're sitting in an environment post-COVID where we've actually had a pretty good market. And so a lot of us have been looking at our 401ks going, I'm pretty good. If I'm going to take, let's say, 4% of that each year in retirement, I'm good. But one of the things people don't realize is what we call sequence of return. And the issue there is it makes a big difference what happens when you retire. So I wanted to just kind of show you this, because and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer on anything, but we're sitting in this high investment market, but you may have read there's a election coming up. There's all this stuff going on and what happened this weekend. So what happens if the market takes a bad turn? Well, let me just give you an analogy that a friend of mine uses is, let's say that you retire and you get 40 cards at retirement, and it's kind of what's life dealing you. And because you don't know what you're going to get in any particular year, you can't control the market. So let's say one year you're going to get a 5% return, another you're going to get a 30% return, but another's like 2007 where we had a 20% loss. You could get this in any order. So you pick one out at each time. Well, where I'm going with this is, what happens if you get a negative one first? So what if you take right where we are now, and because of the election or whatever in international, you have a bad year or 2 bad years? Well, here's the challenge, is that a lot of people look, and don't get worried about all the numbers. I'll explain what I'm getting at here, but often people will say, look, if you take 3 or 4% of your investment portfolio each year, and you figure you're going to live 30 years, and you adjust it each year for inflation, you're probably going to be fine. And so if you come up with that and you set up your portfolio and got it all figured out, sometimes they'll talk about a failure rate. They'll say, okay, in the particular way we set it up with the right mix of investments and figuring out that you're 65 and you want to plan for 30 years, the failure rate's 6%, meaning that only in 6% of the times might you run out of money before you hit 30 years. And a lot of people say, well, I can live with that because I also have, the equity in my home, Social Security, whatever. So at 6%, I'm good. The trouble is, if you pulled out of that deck a 10% loss if you look at the bottom of the slide. So it was a bad year. You know, it was this big change in the market. What happens is that failure rate quickly goes from 6% to 15 or 16%. Or if you had a 20%, remember 2007, bad year, 2008, and you take a 20% loss, suddenly the failure rate just skyrockets from 6% to 30. So I just wanted to bring that out as a point that when you're saying, oh, I think I got enough, I've put money away, I hear there's a take 4% out each year, I'm good. One of the concerns we have, and we'll come back to what do you do about it, but one of the concerns I have is people don't always realize it depends when you retire, because maybe you take maybe you have $1 million, you take out 40,000 this year, and then we have a sudden drop. There's going to be an issue there.
So number one was kind of, if we like, how do we determine if we have enough? Number two was how to retire. So what do you mean by that? Talk to us a little bit more about how.
Yeah, how to retire is a job in and of itself. When my wife and I went to a retirement seminar when we were like 60, and my wife was exposed to all Social Security and Medicare, she made the comment, which she didn't mean in a derogatory way, but she said, how do dumb people retire? Meaning, it's just so complicated. So Medicare, are you going to do, well, I mentioned this before, original Medicare or Medicare Advantage? So actually learning some of those. One that I wanted to mention is the Social Security one, because I'm sure people are sick of hearing on the radio or whatever, oh, you should delay your Social Security. But I'm just going to give you another slide here just to point something out here, is it makes a big difference. Whoops, sorry. So Dr. Wade Pfau, who's kind of the retirement guru for the country, and I wrote a paper, and all I want to get at this is we took an individual had $1 million and a couple had 3 million, and a target income they wanted. So maybe the guy with the $1 million wanted to pull out 40,000 a year or something. And the question we were asking is, okay, if you're going to live 30 years, which way of filing for Social Security and investing your money is going to be give you the best return? So you could do anywhere from getting very conservative and just keeping 25% of your money in equities and the rest all, in the bank or whatever, or you can move up to 50 or 75% that you would have in the markets. And you could either elect your Social Security at 62 and saying, I don't trust the government, I'm going to take it as soon as I can get it, or you can wait as late as 70. Well, I think the numbers speak for themselves, but that single person who wanted $40,000 a year, if he, based on past returns, and we never know where returns go in the future, but I mean, if you really look at over decades of returns, if you kept it in a 50 or 75% equity portfolio, and if you waited till 70, you're probably going to be okay. You're going to have enough money. If instead you get gun shy and you retire, or you file at age 62 and you put your money, in a mattress or get real conservative with it, it's a coin toss. It might be 57%. In other words, figuring out how you're going to retire is a big deal. It's not just show up at the Social Security office and take it at 62. You really have to go through a planning process, working with your advisors to figure out, in your case. Now, with some people, maybe it still makes sense to take Social Security early. So I'm not, lecturing you. I'm just saying it makes a big difference, because in one case, 100% chance of probably being okay. In the other, it's 50%.
I find it's interesting too, in that slide you put up there, Steve, that, there's two factors they're dealing with. One is waiting on Social Security from 62 to 70, and the other is the percentage allocation that's in the equities. Mm-hmm. I think it's interesting and important that we understand the risk reward with each of those scenarios as we meet with our clients.
In fact, if I might just add to that, I didn't want to leave you kind of hanging. It's all about Social Security. Let me suggest a way of dealing with this. You're probably wondering what this picture is, but a way to deal with that, because you're probably thinking, yeah, do I want to have too much in the stock market? is to create your own, I call it my DIY DB, do it yourself defined benefit. In other words, again, my dad had a defined benefit, you know. Nowadays, we just have this 401k. So what I'm getting at here is, see a little kid, he's having his 5th birthday. And they invited some friends, you know, and then maybe they invited 30 friends, but they don't know if 5 will show up, 10, 30. You really don't know, but you don't want the kid to be disappointed. You want to have enough slices of cake for every kid that shows. Well, wouldn't it be cool if you could go to some baker that said, well, that's part of what we do. We charge you X dollars and we'll give you however many slices of cake you need. So we'll start with 5, and if that works, great. But if 30 kids show up, we'll have more slices of cake. Well, I'm being cute here, but that's what really an annuity is. You hear about annuities, but annuities are really a kind of a do-it-yourself defined benefit in the sense that the company says, give me this amount of money, and we'll guarantee to pay you this amount of money for the rest of your life. Now, if you die a few years after doing it, okay, it probably wasn't the best investment. But because we don't have an employer, or most of us don't, just paying checks month after month, it's longevity insurance. And so you really ought to consider, what guaranteed income can I get? Because I showed you the Social Security one. It's a great one, but Social Security maxes out at some point. So what else can you do to help supplement with guaranteed lifetime income? So I just wanted to throw that in. It's not just Social Security and investments. Maybe you can take some of your investments and get more guaranteed lifetime income.
So in reference to dealing with the complexity, you know, at Elevánt Wealth, that's kind of one of our main niches, is in retirement transition planning and helping people to piece together that comprehensive puzzle. But what are some other things that people can do to prepare for actual retirement?
Right. And I think with Elevánt, you know this, that people, it's kind of like WebMD. It still makes sense to do your own learning as well, because then they can come to you with good questions and that kind of thing. So part of it is to go ahead, and it's your retirement, and it's very different than an employer just writing you a check. And, you know, we're not in a socialist country where they just say, we'll take care of you. So starting to educate yourself. And one of the things that is shocking to us, maybe I shouldn't be shocked, but at the American College, we do a literacy survey every 3 years on retirement. And so what we do is, and it's all, you know, scientifically done with a group of thousands of individuals, where we administer a quiz with 38 questions. And we ask, and they're the kind of things that you'd really want to know to really do a good job. And typically they get around 30% right. A little scary. And I'm not judging anybody. I don't like the term literacy because it implies that doing something wrong. But in other words, it's a complicated system, Roth IRAs and all the things going on. So the fact is that complexity of the material is just the way it is. So one thing I would suggest is to make sure you're going to good sources. I see all kinds of junk on the internet, and people will sometimes call me. And by the way, I don't work directly with clients anymore, but so I have the ability to say that's garbage. You probably have to be a little more discreet with that, but trying to get the information right. And I just wanted to show you something. You know, part of this was to give you what's some new things going on. This is an interesting one. So we did this study, okay, that I told you about, and we found that people only got 31% right on the study. Okay, we came up, I didn't, but one of our younger professors came up with a good idea and said, let's have ChatGPT, which is a generative artificial intelligence. Let's administer the quiz to them. We thought it would do pretty well, right? I mean, it has access to the whole internet. Hate to tell you this, guys, but it scored 45%. It got more questions wrong than right about some of these retirement planning questions. So where I'm going with this is, it's nice that the computers are doing all these miraculous things. And believe me, I use AI for a lot of things at our college, and it's a very helpful tool. but it doesn't know everything, and you still need to work with people that know what they're doing. Because imagine going out into this huge universe of the internet and administering some pretty straightforward retirement questions, and it still only gets 45% of it right. The point is, I think we need to work with professionals that can help us and to keep working on it. It's not something where you get a plan, you go, thank you, and walk away. You have to keep monitoring and adjusting as you go on.
It's almost like there's just not quite an easy button. People want that easy button, and every situation is so wildly different that it does require base knowledge, base education, but also assistance and help as well. But no, we find that as we help people retire, so much of it is also not just piecing together the financial puzzle, but also navigating the emotional transition and jumping into, how do you drive meaning and purpose in your life when you're not going to work like you used to, and getting that praise and getting that, that feedback for what you're doing every day. And so there's when you throw all of that into it, it becomes even more complex, it seems. So.
Yeah, because, and I stayed away from kind of the emotional part just so we could talk about some of the financials, but, and being of a certain age, I'm in my 70s, so I get to see it with friends, neighbors. I feel like I'm in a huge retirement lab because I'm watching loved ones age. And a few things that I would bring up, so thank you for bringing that up, Brian, is on some of the other sides of it. One is diminished capacity is a reality, or a risk as you get older. The older you get, the more chances of it. And so one of the things is trying to take care of some of those things in advance. I mean, we've obviously seen wherever you end up politically, that's been obviously an issue in the presidential race. And so you look at those, and the more you can do preventatively, the more it can help. Second, purpose in life, as you mentioned. I really had done what my own working with my advisors and everything else. At 62, I truly could have financially been fine on retiring. Didn't want to. You can see I'm passionate about what we're doing. I have a purpose in life on talking to you in this kind of an environment. That's important. So a lot of people are going through what we call phased retirement. It's a beautiful thing that I can be in Florida and not going on campus and talking to you today because of Zoom. So a lot of people can do that kind of thing. And then I guess the final one I would bring up is we have an almost epidemic in the country of loneliness with older people. And so part of it is building into your plan, how am I going to stay in touch with people? Am I going to volunteer? What am I going to do to really stay busy? Because this idea that I'm going to retire and I'm going to golf every day is wrong. You really have to have some meaning, whether it's family, church. What is your purpose? Because you want to enjoy retirement, not get through retirement.
Yeah. Well, I love how you had started out by talking about this as you have to build your financial home. And the thing you mentioned in reference to calling it your financial home was that we feel comfortable in our homes. Mm-hmm. And so, dealing with the complexity, but then bringing it home to building a plan that you're comfortable with. I know that Dr. Wade Fowle that you've mentioned has done a lot of work in reference to your being aware of your style, like what your preferences are for the style of retirement income that you create. A lot of times professional groups will have kind of their own styles or their own preferences. And so, going in with a little bit of information regarding who you are and what you'd prefer in reference to how you generate retirement income, and then piecing that puzzle together in a way that you truly do feel comfortable in your retirement home, as you called it, I think is a great way to think about it.
Yeah, because we're not all the same. And so some people are risk takers, and some will say, no, I'm good. I'm going to stay in the market. I'm going to work each year. And with my finances and adjust, and I'm good. And then we also know some people who, and I've seen it again, because of my own age, I've seen people who are so afraid of running out of money that they are shortchanging themselves. Mm-hmm. They are going to leave a big legacy, not because they really want to, but because they are just scared to death that they'll run out of money. They know somebody that lived 102 and, they don't want to end up in that situation. You only really know until you talk to people. Not everybody's the same about it. And there are answers for both of those situations, but you don't really know what to do until you get out of them, where is your head on this? And by the way, it does change as you get older. People do get a little more concerned as they get older. So there are ways to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, we are, as you are fighting the good fight and helping people build these financial homes, that they're comfortable with. And man, we appreciate your expertise and knowledge in this second phase of your career, if you will, driven by passion. What a cool thing that you're able to do and help people navigate this stress, because it does represent itself as stress. We had a client come in the other day who was, you could just see it on their face. They're stressed and anxious, and it leads to retiring far later than they could, or like you said, not spending what they could because of that crippling fear that they're doing something wrong. And so no, I love that you mentioned getting good help, looking after good research are all things that are going to help you to feel strong and confident in your retirement plan. And so Steve, thank you so much. Any final thoughts you'd have for us or for our group on the general ideas of retirement income or your expertise?
The only other one that occurred to me as you were talking is, this is particular for people that really are getting to retirement age or at retirement age. In many ways, working on your retirement plan is your new job. And so look at it with some enthusiasm, and kind of what I'm talking about here is make it fun. In other words, okay, Medicare is tricky to think through. Well, this is my new job, and I'm going to work with my advisor and think about how I'm going to do that. If you do that, and another one is take care of your own health, because all the stuff we talked about, if you have lousy health, you can't buy your way out of that. And so that's another thing, is think about, what am I going to do to take care of my own being, to make myself feel comfortable. So I just want to bring that up. We shouldn't just go off to our rocking chairs and, say hi to the grandchildren once a year and be done with it. Let's actively enjoy our retirements.
Yeah. It's funny when you're 30, 40, 50 years old, it's easy to think about retirement as just this blissful time of life that, like, kind of like you mentioned, I'm just going to golf every day, fish every day, whatever it is. But as you get closer, it's often easy to be pessimistic regarding, the life you're jumping into in reference to the fears that are crippling, and like with stock markets and all the unknowns. But no, it is possible to create a wonderful retirement. The one you dreamed of when you were 40 is right in front of you. And I think a little bit of planning and proper positioning of your assets and getting it right, ready to go, it can bring that peace of mind. And so again, Steve, thank you so much for hanging out with us for a little bit. So next month, I wanted to announce we're going to kind of continue this retirement conversation and take a deep dive into Social Security. So Steve talked about that a little bit. It is one of the big pieces of many people's retirement income puzzle. And so we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Social Security program, not just Social Security retirement, but also Social Security Medicare, and have somebody, an expert on the call that's going to talk to us a little bit about what to consider there in reference to diving into that world. So that is going to be on August 15th, I believe. Is that right, Dan?
That's correct. Yes.
On August 15th at noon, as usual. And so until then, we will plan to be ready to talk through that at that time. Until then, thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit of your lunch hour, and we'll talk to you again here soon.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.